The Battle of Yarmouk, fought in 636 AD, is one of the most significant military engagements in world history. This battle was the turning point in the conflict between the Byzantine Empire and the Rashidun Caliphate, marking the decline of the former and the rise of the latter. The Byzantine Empire, the heir to the Roman Empire, had controlled the Levant, Syria and Palestine for centuries. On the other side stood the Muslim forces, a new, rapidly growing empire led by the Rashidun Caliphate, which had emerged just a few decades earlier after the death of Prophet Muhammad. The conflict at Yarmouk was not just about territorial conquest, it was about shaping the future of two distinct civilizations. The Byzantine Empire was the remnant of a once mighty empire with centuries of experience in warfare, strong fortifications and a well-established military. The Rashidun Caliphate, under the leadership of the four rightly guided caliphs, was a much newer force, but it had the drive, determination and unity forged by the common cause of spreading Islam. In 636 AD, the Byzantines, led by Emperor Heraclius, had regained most of the territories in the Eastern Mediterranean, which had once been lost to the Persians. Now they were faced with a new threat. The Muslim forces, who had rapidly conquered vast areas including Persia, Syria and parts of North Africa, this emerging power was looking to push further into Byzantine-controlled territories, and the Battle of Yarmouk would decide if the Muslim expansion could continue or if the Byzantines could retain their power in the region. This battle was a clash not only of armies but also of cultures, religions and worldviews. The Byzantines, with their Christian beliefs, saw the Muslim forces as a threat to the stability of their empire and the survival of Christianity in the East. The Muslim forces, driven by their belief in the one true God, viewed the battle as a crucial step in the spread of Islam, which was quickly gaining momentum after the death of Prophet Muhammad. The roots of the Battle of Yarmouk go back to the early years of the Islamic expansion. After the death of Prophet Muhammad in 632 AD, the Muslim armies quickly turned their attention toward the Byzantine Empire and the Sassanid Persians, two of the most powerful empires of the time. By 634 AD, the Muslims had already defeated the Sassanids in Persia and captured much of the Arabian Peninsula. Their success encouraged them to expand further into the territories controlled by the Byzantines, beginning with the Levant, a region rich in historical and religious significance. The Muslim army, under the leadership of the first caliph, Abu Bakr, and his successors, quickly marched into Syria. Damascus, the capital of Syria, was a key Byzantine city and the first major prize for the Muslims. The capture of Damascus in 634 AD marked a turning point in the conflict. It was a symbolic victory that showed the growing power of the Muslims and their ability to challenge the might of the Byzantine Empire. After the fall of Damascus, the Muslim forces, led by Khalid ibn Waleed, continued their advance into the Byzantine territories. They captured Homs, Emesa, and many other towns, forcing the Byzantines to retreat further toward the north. This success in the field, however, did not come without its challenges. The Byzantine Empire, though weakened by constant warfare with the Sassanids, was still a formidable force with experienced commanders and superior numbers. Emperor Heraclius realized the threat posed by the Muslims and decided to confront them once and for all. Heraclius sent a large army led by his generals to stop the Muslim advance in the Levant. The Byzantine force, estimated at over 100,000 soldiers, was vastly superior in size compared to the Muslim army, which numbered only around 30,000 to 40,000. The Muslims, however, had the advantage of determination, faith and unity. They believed in their cause, and this faith would play a crucial role in the battle that was about to unfold. As the two armies prepared to face each other at Yarmouk, the Muslims understood that this was a battle not just for territory, but for the future of Islam. The Byzantines saw this as a final attempt to stop the Muslim tide from sweeping through the entire Eastern Mediterranean. Both sides knew that the outcome of this battle would shape the future of the region for generations to come. The Battle of Yarmouk began on August 20th, 636 AD, and it quickly became one of the most intense and decisive battles in history. The Byzantine army, commanded by General Vahan, Theodore, and other prominent leaders, advanced toward the Muslim position, confident that their superior numbers and well-established battle tactics would overwhelm the Muslim forces. The battle took place near the Yarmouk River, a strategic location that provided natural defensive advantages for the Muslims. The Muslim forces, led by Khalid ibn al-Walid, took up strong positions using the terrain to their advantage. The Muslims were heavily outnumbered, but they had one thing that the Byzantines did not: unity and faith in their cause. The Byzantine forces, with their heavy cavalry and experienced infantry, initially had the upper hand. They pushed the Muslims back and attempted to break their lines using traditional Byzantine battle tactics. The Muslims, however, employed guerrilla warfare tactics, using their cavalry and mobile infantry to conduct hit-and-run attacks on the Byzantine flanks. By the end of the first day, the Byzantines had failed to break through the Muslim lines. Despite their superior numbers, they had underestimated the resilience and tactical genius of Khalid ibn Waleed. The Muslims had managed to hold their ground, inflicting significant casualties on the Byzantines while avoiding a full-scale engagement. The Byzantine generals were forced to reassess their strategy, but the Muslim forces were only getting stronger. As the second day of the Battle of Yarmouk began, the Byzantine forces, led by their skilled generals, were determined to crush the Muslim army. The Byzantines, despite being outnumbered, had superior equipment, experienced leadership, and a vast array of tactical resources. But they faced a unique challenge in Khalid ibn al-Walid, the commander of the Muslim forces. Khalid was not just a warrior, he was a master tactician, and his understanding of battlefield dynamics was extraordinary. The Byzantines began their attacks with full force, pressing the Muslims hard on all fronts. They had superior numbers, up to 100,000 soldiers, compared to the 30,000 to 40,000 Muslim fighters. The Byzantine army had an advantage in cavalry and archers, which allowed them to harass and weaken the Muslim positions from a distance. On the other hand, the Muslims, despite their smaller numbers, had the advantage of unity, faith, and experience in desert warfare. Khalid ibn al-Walid, recognizing the importance of terrain and positioning, deployed his forces strategically to counter the Byzantine onslaught. Yarmoukh's terrain played a significant role in the battle. The riverbanks, the hills, and the rugged landscape provided natural obstacles for both sides. Khalid used the terrain to limit the Byzantines' ability to maneuver freely and to reduce the effectiveness of their cavalry. He positioned his mobile cavalry units in a way that allowed them to conduct swift raids on the Byzantine flanks, which harassed the enemy and caused confusion. One of Khalid's most remarkable tactics was the feigned retreat. He knew that the Byzantine generals were accustomed to the classic warfare strategies of the time, which involved pressing forward when they saw an opportunity. So the Muslim forces pretended to retreat in a seemingly disorganized manner. This move, appearing to show weakness, enticed the Byzantines to pursue the Muslims in what they believed to be a pursuit of victory. As the Byzantines advanced, believing they had broken the Muslim lines, Khalid ordered his soldiers to turn around and engage in a devastating counterattack. The Byzantine cavalry, once in pursuit, found themselves trapped and surrounded by the agile and fast-moving Muslim horsemen. The Muslim cavalry, though outnumbered, had superior mobility and the advantage of hit-and-run tactics, a key factor that turned the tide in their favor. Khalid's strategy was to create chaos among the Byzantine forces and disorient them. As the Byzantine army tried to reorganize, the Muslim forces launched well-timed, precise strikes against the disoriented and scattered units. These tactics exploited the Byzantine weakness, their inability to adapt quickly to unconventional and non-linear warfare. The Muslims had learned to disrupt their opponents' lines and create confusion, and this was evident on the battlefield. By the end of the second day, the Byzantine forces were struggling to maintain their position. They had been thrown off balance, unable to achieve a decisive breakthrough. The Muslim forces were not just holding their ground, they were starting to push back. This turning point in the battle would go down in history as a brilliant example of military strategy where outnumbered forces prevailed through tactical superiority and strategic brilliance. In the evening, Khalid's forces regrouped and prepared for the final assault. They were ready to unleash their full strength, knowing that a decisive victory at Yarmouk would mean the end of Byzantine control in the region and would pave the way for the Muslim expansion across the Levant. The third and final day of the Battle of Yarmouk was a decisive moment, not just for the Muslims but for the entire region. The Byzantine army, which had been confident of victory on the first day, was now struggling to hold on to its positions. The Muslims, despite being outnumbered, had managed to turn the tide through superior tactics, unity, and faith in their cause. On this final day, the Byzantines launched a series of desperate attacks in a bid to break through the Muslim lines. The Byzantine cavalry, supported by their infantry, attempted to charge at the Muslim positions in a coordinated effort. They tried to use their numbers to overwhelm the Muslim defenders and push them back, but the Muslim forces under Khalid ibn al-Walid were prepared for this and knew that the Byzantine cavalry would be their main strength. The Muslim forces once again used their knowledge of the terrain to their advantage. Khalid ibn al-Walid had strategically placed his troops in such a way that the Byzantine cavalry was unable to use their full power. The Muslim archers and cavalry units attacked the Byzantine flanks while the main body of the army held the centre. This attack on the Byzantine flanks caused confusion and chaos within their ranks. As the battle progressed, the Byzantine army began to fragment. The Muslims, encouraged by their success on the previous days, launched a full assault on the Byzantine forces, cutting off any possible retreat. The Byzantine generals, who had once commanded a well-organized force, now found themselves surrounded by Muslim forces on all sides. The Byzantines began to panic, and what was once a formidable fighting force now started to collapse under the pressure of the Muslim onslaught. The Muslim cavalry, with Khalid ibn al-Walid leading the charge, broke through the Byzantine defences and began to pursue the retreating Byzantine soldiers. The Byzantine army, once one of the most powerful military forces in the world, was now in full retreat, and the Muslim forces had achieved a resounding victory. The aftermath of the Battle of Yarmouk was a defining moment in history. The Byzantine Empire, though still intact, had lost its hold over the Levant. The Muslims had secured control over Syria, Palestine, and Jordan, and they were poised to move further into the Byzantine territories. The Muslims had not only won a battle, they had secured their future as the dominant power in the Middle East. The Byzantine Empire had suffered heavy losses in both men and morale, and this defeat at Yarmouk marked the end of their expansionist ambitions in the region. The Rashidun Caliphate was now in control of key territories, and the Muslim forces continued their campaign of expansion into Egypt, North Africa, and beyond. The victory at Yarmouk solidified Khalid ibn al-Walid's reputation as one of the greatest military commanders in history and ensured that the Muslim Empire would continue to thrive in the centuries to come. In the wake of the battle, the Muslims were able to make significant advances in the region. The Byzantine defeat at Yarmouk paved the way for the Muslim conquest of Jerusalem in 637 AD and the eventual fall of the Byzantine hold over much of the eastern Mediterranean. The victory also had profound religious and cultural significance, as the Muslim forces believed they were fulfilling a divine mission. The Muslim victory at Yarmouk is seen by many historians as one of the most important events in Islamic history, a moment that would shape the future of the Middle East for centuries to come. The aftermath of the Battle of Yarmouk was far-reaching. The Byzantine Empire, once a powerful force in the Mediterranean, was no longer able to defend its eastern territories. Heraclius, the Byzantine emperor, was forced to concede defeat, and the Muslims began to expand rapidly into Jerusalem, Egypt, and North Africa. The victory at Yarmouk not only solidified the Muslims' control over the Levant, but it also marked the beginning of a new era in the history of Islam. The Rashidun Caliphate, under the leadership of Abu Bakr and Umar ibn al-Khattab, would go on to build an empire that stretched from Spain to India. For the Byzantines, the defeat at Yarmouk was a devastating blow. The Byzantine Empire never fully recovered its lost territories, and the Muslim expansion continued unchecked for centuries.